To FMCSA's credit, they did reject the original exemption request from Waymo and Aurora. But yeah, there's more with that too.
The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration is planning to study whether warning devices on stopped commercial motor vehicles help prevent crashes. Sounds simple enough, but a closer look exposes a number of questions about the origins of the study and more. And joining us with his magnifying glass is Mark Schrimmer, Senior Editor of Landline Magazine. Mark, good to see you.
Doing well.
Let's start with the basics here. We've got this FMCSA study in the works on warning devices, the orange triangles mostly that are required to be carried on all CMVs. And you wrote a piece for landline.media that saying basically that this is a perfect example perhaps of over-regulation. We'll get to that, but can you talk a little bit about the study here and what they're looking to do?
Yeah, so on the surface, it's good. It's what drivers kind of ask for in general when it comes to regulations. They have proposed a study to take a look of whether or not the regulation that's on the books actually benefits safety or not. And they're planning a study. I think it's going to have 275 drivers of passenger vehicles that will basically be able to try to determine whether or not they're actually picking up these warning devices and whether they're helping actually deter crashes or not. And so, like I said, that's a good thing at first glance on the surface. That's what drivers and OIDA talk about all the time. There's a huge green book of regulations, and as Todd Spencer, OIDA president, says all the time, if they don't benefit safety, they should be out of there.
Yeah,
and that's as simple as that. And so that's what they're trying to do here. So on the surface, again, a positive thing.
However, let's get beyond the surface now, I suppose. The origins of the study is kind of what brings a whole host of things into question here. It's coming from a different place. If there were trucking groups who were asking for it, you might say, okay, great. However, there seems to be an ulterior motive here. Yeah,
this to me, like I said, is frustrating, and I imagine a lot of drivers would be frustrated when they realize about it, because let's first think about what this regulation is that's been on the books for decades. If there is a stopped, disabled commercial motor vehicle, the driver is supposed to get out, perhaps at their own safety risk, and put these cones out at specific places, depending on whether they're on a curve or straight roads, and all of the stuff that they have to do. Again, there's this huge green book of all of these things that drivers have to comply with, and if not, there are consequences. And so, they've had to do this all the time. But this isn't being looked at. If you kind of read in between the lines of this study and the notice that they're talking about, they're not looking at this because, hey, drivers have been having to do this, they're putting their safety at risk, let's really look at this and find out whether it's safe or not. It's all coming from this idea that Aurora and Waymo, driverless trucking companies, have asked to remove this warning device regulation because obviously
who's going to put them out?
Because the driverless vehicles, the drivers can't do that. Right. So they've asked for something. To FMCSA's credit, they did reject the original exemption request from Waymo and Aurora. But yeah, there's more with that too. But they also, it kind of told them, even in that notice, gave them a very strong hint. Hey, if you resubmit this and it's not as broad as the one that you asked for, there's a good chance you might get the second one. And then we see this study all of a sudden. So again, it's just one of those things that if drivers, again, are frustrated all the time, that all of these regulations that may or may not actually benefit safety that are looked at, and when drivers complain about those, it seems like nobody's listening. Yeah. And suddenly now that driverless companies that are, and obviously remove the jobs of the drivers as well, that they want an exemption. Now we're going to start looking at it. That's how, at least, FMCSA may have some more nuanced thoughts on it. They do mention in the notice the safety of the drivers, but again, it's kind of after where this whole thing, you could see all of these things coming in of how the fact that this is all starting with Aurora and these driverless companies, truck companies that want to remove this regulation. And Friday, it was just announced that Aurora is suing over that denial. So there's a lot at play here, and it's not about drivers complaining about there being too many regulations.
Yeah, and that's a frustrating part of all this, as you kind of laid out there. And it makes you wonder where this is all heading, as well as autonomous vehicles and autonomous trucks start to become more prevalent on roadways. Are they going to look at more regulations and kind of kowtow to these autonomous vehicle companies?
Yeah.
There may be some good results that come out of that for, truck drivers and actual people that are out there.
Yeah.
But it makes you wonder, where is this all going?
Yeah, and that's the thing, too, and it's mentioned in the notice as well that, kind of all of these regulations that specifically mention a driver having to be the one that does it, what are we going to do
What's
about
going to happen
this?
to those? Yeah.
Yeah, and there's going to be a ton of those. But again, it's just frustrating to the idea that these new companies can come in and kind of get special treatment after drivers for decades have had to comply with these things. The fact that, they're planning on deploying these driverless trucks in Texas this year.
Yep.
Now, obviously, this could be something that slows that down even more. They were supposed to do it in 2024, weren't able to. There's a lot of money at stake here for companies like Aurora because, they got a lot of money invested, and if they're not able to deploy those trucks out in Texas in 2025, there's probably going to be some upset millionaire and billionaires out there.
Yeah, well, and to that point, too, that money is going to be used to lobby people
Sure.
in Washington, D.C. to get what they want, and we're seeing some of that obviously right now as well. But we'll see more of it. This conversation will continue over the course
100%.
of the coming years and maybe decades. Who knows? We'll see there. But Mark Schirmer, we appreciate you coming by and filling us in.
All right, thank you.